want to spend a little bit of time talking about the building architect because unfortunately it's a powerful tool, but it's not in the most way practical when it comes to sharing your map with other people. Now, you can have the JSON file in your map folder, but anytime anybody wants to play on your map, they have to open up the building architect and they have to hit load, and they would have to load all of those procedural buildings that you created. So let me just show you the buildings. This isn't going to be a tutorial where I'm talking about how to set them up. I really just want to talk about how to save and what you're going to have to be dealing with. So I made these like kind of test dummy buildings, and there's kind of some caveats. I'm not gonna like I said, I'm not gonna show how to make them, but they're actually pretty cool when you start fiddling with them. And it's unfortunate because I really wanted this to be something that was easily placeable on my map. Unfortunately, it appears in order to really make them a static object that loads every time you launch your map, you have to use Blender. So I'm thinking maybe I'll run into that a little bit, but so the point of this being just looking at the save operations. I do want to reference the manual right here. So for the case of the building architect, it is in its infancy, you could say. So it's not going to be the best tool for saving and sharing, but it's a cool tool to play with. But just to kind of touch on it, your options are you can save the session, which saves just the building architect session, or you can export the session, in which case it just exports a Collada DAE file, which I'll run over here. So I just wanted to go to the bottom of this documentation. It's definitely cool to check out. It'll definitely teach you some things about how to use the architect tool, how to create buildings, but unfortunately at the bottom it does say that they are even acknowledging that it doesn't it's not in a state where it lets you save them in any real fashion. The only way you'll ever see them is by using the building architect and loading it. So that's important to kind of wrap your head around. So basically what they're saying is that they just want this to be done as a provide feedback element, probably for future changes that will probably involve you saving them better. You're limited to the building architect loading the session. Now I don't know if you can load multiple, like if you wanted say 2 cities and you loaded one, could you load the other? It doesn't really matter to me. I'm not at the point where I want to share my map with any of that. However, if you wanted to provide feedback, that's probably a good thing. I did want to discuss the things I did explore regarding save options, which failed. So let me see if I can review that before we go into Blender. So I guess the whole reason was I wanted to try to wrap your head around the reasoning why it doesn't really work outside of the road architect session, if that makes sense. So when you're in the session, you have certain capabilities. You can edit things, splice things or whatever. I'm not going to go through it because I'm just learning it, but I've already wrapped my head around the save process. So if we go outside of the architect session by closing it, and we go into object mode, now we look at the object mode version of what was showing in the architect session. And you look, and all of these representations are simply instances that seem to be having their origin spawn at under the world. To try and see if I can make this thing stay persistent, I tried a few things. I tried taking them all. I tried packing them as a prefab. That didn't work. It just gave me the same. It was basically just not even spawn anything. I tried a few things. I tried going like here. I tried going into the thing and making sure it was can save, but same thing. It basically just did the same thing. And let me show you why I thought that this is happening. And this is probably why it's still in its infancy. They'll probably change how this works, but so if you look at the JSON file that kind of gets created, that's the only thing. You have the JSON and then you have the DAE file. So the DAE isn't going to help you in the game, but the JSON might. No, it doesn't in this case, because if you look at the JSON, it's really just like these persistent pieces of data that kind of can only be used by the road architect right now. Like, there's no way. I tried to put these JSONs somewhere. Like, I tried to put it in my root folder. Like, you have all these things. Like, there's doors and stuff, but some of the stuff isn't quite, it's not really something the game engine can read without the road architect telling it how to read it, if that makes sense. So, for the sake of argument, you're probably going to just have to use Blender, because until they come up with a way for this to give you a JSON that has something meaningful that the game engine can use, every time you restart the game, you're basically going to see nothing, and you're just going to have to hit building architect load and just load your JSON, and then there it'll be, and then you close the game and reload it, it'll be gone. So just before I go into Blender, I think I just want to make a note of the glass materials. So what I want to try and do, I haven't even opened these up yet, and I really want to mess with the making sure that the glass I'm going to be able to apply, and then I'll work around the other materials. But so what I'm basically utilizing is the art shapes folder under garage and dealership, specifically clutter in that main material file and in garage. I basically scraped these two material names, and one's very long, the other's not so long, but the idea is we're going to look at our material or our object in Blender, and we're going to try and just assign these material names to, say, the glass window structure, and the other material names to, like, say, the bricks. And I'm going to go find them here. Oh, it took some digging to find it, but in the art shapes folder, which you've heard me talk about more than once, there's a new folder you'll notice on the new update 0.35 called Building Architect Modules. Interestingly enough, in there might be some insight to, say, our windows, which now all of a sudden we're seeing these DAE files. Not so much important as the DAE, but the main material, if I could find one. Let's see if I can find a main material in this jive. Okay, so there's not a main material in this entire directory. However, I don't need a main material file per se. What I do need is a material name to match in Blender. And I'm going to show you that, but let me just show you there's two spots to find the material name that you need. Let me just show this, which this one's kind of cumbersome to look at because it's like sideways in Notepad+, but if you look, that's the bat file name all the way down. There should be some, I guess the first part of it might be the material name that you need, the dang material, which gives you everything. So I think it's just that first little section without the BAT at the end. Just cladding underscore zinc. So if you think about it, if you named, say, a face in Blender cladding underscore zinc, and you loaded that in game as a DAE, it should pop up, voila, as your wall or whatever. Hope that makes sense. Some people probably wouldn't be like whoosh, but let's see if we can dive deeper. Well, then I'm seeing like T roof slates rounded. So I think I'm gonna just start making like kind of a list. So I'm basically just gonna start copying like some of this stuff. T roof slates rounded. And I kind of realized instead of looking at the JSON file, you're probably better off just looking at the DAE file when you see them. So if you edit the DAE file down in Notepad, you see at the bottom, very bottom, all the material names will be actually just listed in plain view, and you don't have to fiddle around with all this. So what I basically be looking at, alright, there we go. I had to Control F the word material. So you can see instance material, M plaster worn, that's a material name, end metal trim. So if you took these, I'll just copy like that one, I mean, I could just start fiddling around in Blender basically. At this point, we're going to be fiddling around in Blender. But before we fiddle around in there, I want to fiddle around in here and start copying these names. Just putting them in a list. And I'm just basically going to be like, hey, so the logic is everything that's in this list, if it's a material name, is going to automatically get loaded whenever they load their map. you know, so you can actually share these things without having to fiddle around with extra baked textures and all that good stuff. So let's see if we can add more. So what I'm just going to do, that's pretty much it for that DAE. I'm just going to go to another DAE file. Let's look at, doors. I guess you could look at doors. And if you look at doors, Control F, material. I don't know why I showed you the JSON method. That was probably the worst to show, but, oh, material. If I look material, so M worn, you have some things, if you wanted to assign them in game. You could always create your own custom image maps, but if you didn't want to worry about baking those textures and like trying to get those, because they're not going to just work without a JSON or the color map sitting in a folder somewhere. And if it's not a vanilla color map, you're going to have to add it to your level to be able to share it, and that's going to shoot up your level size. Nobody wants the big level sizes. But so I'm not sure how I would do a door. I mean, I could probably just like fiddle with a few of them. So I think in this case, I'm probably just going to copy this whole thing and I'm just going to paste that into a scratch pad. That way I can see it later, and I might even kind of say door and do that. That way I can reference these materials, just this guy, and I can kind of add things. We'll see what the model, I haven't even looked at the model in Blender yet, so let's hope I can get to that point. So since I started talking about the glass, I guess I could look at the Windows DA file and look at the material that it's looking at, which would be worn, let's see, transparent glass window. So let me just do this. I'm going to copy that. So I mean, at this point, I kind of have enough to kind of like open this thing in Blender, I think, and just see what we're working with and tweak it as we go, I guess. Fun. But it would be nice if this thing could just like automatically save in your level and like give you a separate element. Like things that can't be editable after saving are annoying, specifically with the Road Architect and previous tools. So I don't know if this is ever going to really be something we'll eventually have, something more palatable, but I don't know. Let's just see what it looks like in Blender first, because, that's all you can really do at this point, unless you want to just hit the load button every time and tell a user to go in the world editor and load it. You could probably do that and just have the JSON in your main map folder and say instruct them to click this, open up the building architect, and load the JSON, and poof, your buildings will all be there. I guess you could do it that way, but let's see what it looks like in Blender. Alright, let me just drag this thing in here. I already exported it from the game. We're just going to take a photo. Let me first delete my default plane. And import Collada. See what we get. Alright, so here's my building, and I realized I had thought I exported the entire scene, which was 3 buildings, but in this case, it appears that when I was saving it, there's no way to export 3 buildings. Like, you can only click and select one at a time. It's very weird what you can do when you export, so I think your exporting options are limited to you exporting just one single object. And when I look at the object, I'm seeing, just look at the origin in the middle. That little orange dot is staying there, so I know that it's all basically centering itself in the world. It's not really something you would align to the terrain in this sense. So if you had a million buildings and you just wanted it to be one DAE, that's not really going to be able to be done with this method. Now, you'd be better off writing an instruction set for the end user to have them just load it with the building architect as opposed to trying to use Blender for it, which it's another step, but I mean, I might actually make a map to see if I can make it happen. However, you're limited on the size. The buildings are pretty big and it doesn't fit my map, so I don't know if I'm going to be using any of the building architect stuff. But I just wanted to look at it in Blender and see if we can just get one building into the template map and see what it looks like. Let me delete the light here and look at this. So the first thing, obviously, is there's not any material. The second thing was I wanted to see if there was even a UV map. Probably more important is there a UV map. So you'll notice that the UV map and the material stuff doesn't come from the game. Basically, when you export it this way, all you get is the geometry essentially. So tough break. And you can tell it's even stated in their notes that the geometry isn't perfect, and you can tell, like, look how bad that is. I mean, I don't even know if I would want this in my level because of, like, if I had a bunch of these, this is going to tank your performance because of how bad and efficiently this geometry is laid out. So let's just as a because since I have nothing to worry about, let's just merge by distance. It just removed 114 vertices just by doing that. So if I just simply raw exported that back to my game, you know how inefficient that would be. That's not the way you should be working. But all right. So I don't know. Maybe should I even bother? I don't know if I should bother trying to add materials to this. It's not even really a workflow like I want to try and do, but it's kind of a tedious process with, especially when the geometry is this bad. So let me just try one and see if I can give you a workflow to work with. If you start clicking some similarly selected faces, there's other ways to select similar faces, but basically if you just did that and then control plus on the numpad, control plus, you know, and you can kind of get, so if you're not used to Blender, if you hold shift and press the tilde key, you can kind of like go to free cam mode, and WSAD moves you around, and shift mouse wheel will slow you down. But that's kind of the general idea of how you navigate your view, and then you're just kind of looking, oh, is it done? Looks pretty good. You know, you can set that as, so if we wanted to say set this, and obviously I'd have to repeat that process, but for those other windows, but if I just wanted, say, a new material, and the theory is if I say wood frame trim right here, we're just going to use this as a test example. Copy. And if we name that wood frame trim, the same thing. So now if I assign those faces wood frame trim, and usually what I probably want to do is just create a vertex group. We'll just say wood window frame, enter. We're going to say assign. That way it's in the group. So if I uncheck anything and I hit select, it'll just, you know, select that easily. You don't have to worry about re-clicking all that stuff. But you can also, you know, if you just select, and then you can also click more things and click assign, and it'll add that to that group. That's one fancy way to control what you're clicking. But so for the windows, see how they're just basically two triangles? You could basically just say, oh, you know, let's do a new material and call it, what is it? Glass or something? You know, M transparent glass window. Copy that. Just give that, that's the name you're going to be giving it. Control V. And then we're going to just hit assign. So now that's basically that. The brick walls seem to be easy enough. You know, you just easily, they're bigger faces, so at least you can easily click them all. Boom, boom, boom. Control plus, hold it down. I guess we can do the door, but I don't know. I didn't want to go through the tedious process of creating this entire building just to import it as a very inefficient DAE, but we could try. So for the walls, I'll probably just create a new vertex group. Just call it walls and assign. That way I'm free to click off of it. You can always control Z if you're messing up, but I guess the next thing would be probably to do this door. Of course, every face needs a material assigned, so you know it's going to be a tedious process. Alright, we're going to do this different way. I'm just going to select by, and we're just going to separate by loose parts. Separate by loose parts. Didn't want to do that, but you know what? Let's see what it does. Let's see what it actually does. So if I hold shift and start clicking, and let's see. What is that? G. See, that's the whole. Okay, so that's just that. Which I guess is okay. So I guess separate by loose parts is probably the best. I'm debating on just cutting this thing in half just so I can use a mirror modifier instead of, ah, boy. I don't know. It looks cool though. Alright, just kind of wrapping up. Just want to show you what I'm doing. I'm just clicking, holding shift click, holding shift click, and I'm doing control J to join. So now you have one object. So control J. Oh, make sure my windows are selected. Control J. So now that's all just one window. Instead of having to manually fiddle around selecting a bunch of faces. So I got one window set up. I'm using shift tilde to free look. And I'm basically clicking in object mode. So I have this. All these are control joined. Pretty much. You just try and G grab, make sure that nothing is standing out. So I click, hold shift, click the other one, and control J. And then I'm joining them. Alright, so now the idea is let me just select like the walls. What was that? These don't need a bunch of materials. Let me minus sign all these to clear them out because I don't need a bunch of materials floating around on everything. So we're just going to do I'm just going to do one side. So basically I'm going to have, now the materials are still in my list. So transparent glass window. So now this, oh, yep, new, and then I'll just say, make sure the material name doesn't have any .001s. So now the door, I guess, could be, we minus those out. Put the frame trim, whatever. I'm just trying to prove a point that you don't need to have like your materials baked to get this to work. And basically all you want to do, I'm only going to do the one side, the roof, and then you really just want to edit mode, give it a UV map. I don't know, smart UV, sure, why not? Let's see what it looks like. I probably want to scale it up. I don't know. I think that's going to look weird. It's going to look pixelated, but I don't really have a color map to go on. If I did want the color map, I'd have to take my little like wood frame. You know, you can pop that in your color of some of these materials, like, but this isn't really a tutorial for all that. You know, you hook that up to the color, but when you export it as a collada, it doesn't save any of that. That's just to view it, to see if it looks good. And this is just a test to show that you can get materials on your stuff without baking or, you know, whatever. To show that, you know, I don't know. I guess you could do it in Blender without using a custom image map because you're going to have to save that in your folder. But the point was to just have some materials on some of this stuff, specifically the glass. I wanted to show the glass. That's really what I wanted. Mostly focusing on that and see what that looks like. So let me just do a select all here. I'm going to do file, export, collada, selection only. Let me just put it in my folder wherever. And after being saved, you can tell there's no modifiers or nothing. It's just raw geometry. You know, if you wanted to be fancy, you could always do edit mode, hit A, hit M, like Mary, and then do by distance, and then 0.0001 is probably a little low, so I'd be like 0.001, hit enter. There's 5 vertices, so it's removing some stuff that's vertices close together. Let me re-export that, and we'll do it that way. Alright, so I exported this collada, which I'm just going to leave it as untitled, and if I edit, you can go to the bottom or just Control F material and see the material references that you've created. So basically that's the idea of coming from Blender. It'll basically add those in, you know. So let's go see me if I can rip this in game and see what it looks like just to test. I haven't done anything else. That's all I did was naming the materials on the faces, and something that's in the art shapes folder will automatically pull. So let's see. Alright, so I just put it in my art shapes folder. So if I bring in my untitled DAE, which probably doesn't look the way it should now. I don't know if my normals are messed up. Yeah, it looks like the normals might be messed up. But anyway, I just wanted to, the whole point was to show the material that would work if you know, essentially the UV map's messed up That's why it looks weird. But essentially, the theory is if you had a material that was already listed in Artshapes, you can get the UV map correct and use those PNGs or DDS files in Blender and basically match them up and tediously spend hours and hours trying to get a building to look good. Or I guess you could always just tell a user to do this, which is building architect, load the JSON that's in your map, hit open. There's my pretty buildings with all the materials. I don't have to fiddle with it. The only thing is you're limited to, you can configure them in the architect, but you can't move them around unless you do it through the procedural things. There's a way to do it where you can move all the buildings around. I'm not going to show that, but I was just trying to wrap everybody's head around saving it and some of the caveats. So it's like, it's kind of a cool tool to fiddle with, but at the end of the day, sharing it, you know, you can get them all, you can have it like if you had a million of them placed, all along your map, millions and millions of buildings, different shapes and different sizes of different scales, or whatever the thing is to make them go higher. If you had that all over your map and you wanted somebody to play on it, you really have to save it as a JSON in your map folder and tell them to basically hit the architect there, building architect, and load it. And then they would see it, So I would not be using Blender to do this on like a production scale simply because of the time. It kind of defeats the purpose of like you might as well just not use the architect at all and just create 3D buildings in Blender if that's what you're going to do. But hopefully someday we can get this stuff to be saved in your map natively. That'd be pretty cool. If that ever comes around, I guess I'll make another video, but for now, that's all I'm doing. All right.